That was a private family joke. I want to welcome you here this evening to hear our friends Mike and Judy Manna. And for those of you who don't know it, this is our daughter Franny. And if it weren't for Franny, that's Franny's husband clapping. If it weren't for Franny, Eric and I would have never met Mike and Judy. We would have known who they were because they were involved in Camp Halawasa, and I was too at some point. And they would come to our church and fill in and that kind of stuff out at Nisland. But we wouldn't have really gotten to know them if it weren't for Franny. So this is my daughter, Franny.
Hey, Franny. Hi. So I met Mike and Judy in, I believe it was the summer of 1996 when I was 19. Now you know how old I am. I was a counselor at Camp Halawasa, and Mike and Judy did the teaching and the music and the games, and it was really fun. And at the time, they were serving in youth ministry in Belfouche, and I was going to college in Spearfish, and they had a college-age Bible study, so I joined that, and I got to know them through that, and their little kids, who the youngest, I think, was in diapers at the time. I don't know how they did camp with 3 little kids, but they did. They were amazing. And so I introduced them to my parents when we brought the group out sledding at their hill. And then when they joined the mission field to go to Ukraine, started supporting them and have been proud to support them ever since. And watch how they have grown and have served the Lord in so many different capacities. And it's just been an honor to know them. Here they are.
I got this for you if you want it.
I do. I would love it.
Would Bill probably push on this side? This side's good? It's bent for your right if you are okay with it. Otherwise, we'll put it on your left, which is bent. Let's do that.
That's great. There?
We can just put it on the outside.
Awesome. There you go. Thank you very much. Just put it in there. All right, everyone. This is wonderful. Then I don't have to stand up here. And then you can hear me, right? Testing 1, 2. Everybody can hear me? Do I look strange? No? Okay, good. And this is great. I'm going to be able to be down here now, and that's better, right? And so I have a task for you as we start off this. Okay, and that is I'm going to teach you a Ukrainian phrase, and then I'll introduce ourselves, okay? First off, we're going to learn Ukrainian tonight. Anybody know Ukrainian here? No, okay, good. Niet, okay. Actually, let's see, it's da and tak is yes, actually in Ukrainian, tak, T-A-K, tak. And da is Russian for yes, but actually, niet is the same, isn't it, Judy? Niet, okay, niet, it's always the same. No is always the same. Here we go. My hata skraju. Everyone? My hata skraju. Next phrase. Oh, that means my hut is on the edge of the village. Okay? My hut is on the edge of the village. Next phrase. Nichevo nie znаю. Everyone? Nichevo nie znаю. Okay, so what have you said? My hut is on the edge of the village. I know nothing. Okay? All right. It's a great Ukrainian phrase, and actually it's a very common one to show Ukrainian culture. I was in Western Ukraine in one particular house, and we lived in Ukraine 10 years. We'll share with you that in a moment. But in one house, and I was talking to the owner of the house, and we were just guests in the house, and he said, Mike, I want to tell you something. This house has never moved, okay? In the last 100 years, it's never moved. But in the last 100 years, this house has been in 5 different countries. Okay, so the borders changed that often in 100 years that house had been in 5 different countries. So, what does that mean? You guys just do whatever you want up there in the governments and capitals of your countries. I know nothing. I just don't want to deal with it, okay? That's the Ukrainian mindset because of history and culture. And so, well, the reason I start with that is that culture is very important. in ministry. And we're going to talk about that just a little bit today. And we're going to talk about sort of, if you don't mind, us sharing a little bit of our stories and some of our ministry God's called us to with Youth for Christ International. And on top of that, also, I hope that you go away with something, okay, tonight. So can I start us with prayer? Let's start with prayer. Father, thank you for this chance tonight just to prayerfully glorify you as we share these stories, Lord. May you be the one that's the center of our thoughts. And Lord, we're going to focus a lot on Eastern Europe, but as we think about the whole world, Lord, that needs you, that you would help us to be part of that. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. And so Judy is going to be coming up here and sharing in just a moment. But first of all, for those that don't know us, I thought I'd give you a little introduction, okay? Who we are, why are we in South Dakota, and why are we in Rapid City tonight? So anyway, we did 15 years of full-time ministry in South Dakota, okay? Before God moved us to Ukraine. And I was a chaplain of Sunshine Bible Academy. Then I was associate for 6 years there. 7 years then at Christian Life Center in Bellevue. We started a large regional youth event called the New Year's Eve Teen Blast. I don't know if any of you are old enough to hear about that. We used to do that. We had over 600 teens from all over the Black Hills come on New Year's Eve to Bellevue, have a Christian band and evangelism. So those are the kind of things that we did in our years in ministry. And then God called us to Ukraine. All right, so we lived there for 10 years. We took our 3 children there. And then we actually passed the baton of ministry on to others in Ukraine. And so they're continuing to do the ministry there. I trained youth pastors because I was in youth ministry. So God called me to do that. We moved back to the U.S. and now what I do is I direct what's called the Global Training Team for Youth for Christ International. What that means is that we have 100 countries around the world that are all indigenous in Youth for Christ. In other words, South Africans work for South Africa Youth for Christ. It's not Americans there. If it's Germany Youth for Christ, it's Germans that work there. If it's Ireland Youth for Christ, Ireland Youth for Christ, it's Irish people. You understand what I'm getting at, okay? And so we do have some American help a little bit sometimes, or maybe the Germans go help in South Africa or whatever, you understand. But we coordinate the training around the world for all these countries. And it's a blessing to be involved with that. And then our children are all married now. We married our last one off. We had 3 biological, and we have also one that's in the middle there, actually, with her new husband this summer, got married, and she's Ukrainian because we adopted a Ukrainian along the way. And you're going to get to hear her story tonight a little bit because Judy's going to share more about Katya, okay? And she's right there in the middle. We now have 5 grandchildren and a 6th on the way. So we're very excited about that to be in this stage of our lives. So let me share with you just a little bit of some of the different areas of our ministry, and we'll give stories along the way. The first area I'd like to share about one thing that we do is encouragement, okay? What we've discovered as we've discipled others over these 30 years of ministry now, that even though we've discipled somebody, we don't just drop them and say, "Das vidanya," okay, in Russian, all right? We care about them. We love them. We want to be part of their lives still. And so one example is this summer we met with one of my former youth ministry students who is now a youth ministry professor, and his name is Roddick and his family. And I want you to get a little touch of what the kind of person that we get to be with. We were there in their home this summer. They have a 1-bedroom village home with 4 children, and they didn't have room for us to sleep in their house when we visited them. So they had a gazebo, and we slept outside in the gazebo, and Judy loved it. She loves sleeping outside. The cat came up and cuddled between us. All right.
Down comforters from the feathers of their own geese.
Their own geese filled our blanket, yeah. And so anyway, we had such a great time with them. And I'll share a little bit more of their story, but watch this little video.
И миллионы твоих людей, твоих детей поют о любви твоей. И в этот миг забудем все горе мы, и от земли оторвемся с корнем мы, и у престола царя царей мы будем коронованы. Смотри, зашла звезда, наша с тобой звезда, и все сердца осветила она. Звезда Вифлеемская, это звезда Христа. Мы радовались, 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 радовались. Это звезда Христа. Мы радовались, 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 радовались. Это звезда Христа. Мы радовались, парам-пам, это звезда Христа. Парам-пам, это звезда Христа.
Isn't that great? Isn't that beautiful? They didn't even know I was videotaping, had my little camera down low, you know, as I'm videotaping them, just
About shining like the stars in heaven.
shining like the stars in heaven. And it was in Russian, actually, they were singing. And it's just a beautiful example of ministry that we get to do an encouragement, because we wanted to go and encourage them, and we did as we were there, but they also encouraged us, because at this exact same meal, Radek and Sophia, that's his wife's name, they sat down with us and they said, Mike and Judy, we want to tell you something special. Now, we have relationship with them many, many years, okay? We lived in Kyiv for 10 years. He was one of my students at the theological seminary there. He graduated with his bachelor's degree in youth ministry, got a master's degree in biblical counseling, and is actually a teacher of youth ministry, and has been going in a couple different Bible colleges in Ukraine training youth pastors. But they said, Mike, it's not the same as when we went to be with you in Kyiv, because you brought us into your home, and Judy also ministered to us by serving us pizza or something like that, and just loving on us when we came in you. And Judy was involved in our ministry. And Sophia, she can't be involved in my ministry. And it's so much more than in the classroom. It's so much more outside of the classroom, what is you really learn things as you live with people. So he says, Mike and G, we're going to follow your example. We're moving to the town where our local Bible college is, and we're going to move as missionaries there with our 4 children, and we're going to serve as missionaries just like you and Judy did when you came over to us. And they've raised support from Ukrainians, and they're doing this all on their own. And it's very exciting to see that what we started in one Bible college in Ukraine, in Kyiv, is now in 5 different Bible colleges in Ukraine. So we're excited to see that. It takes a little effort, but on the other part, we're doing what 2 Timothy 1:6 says. Paul wrote Timothy, he said, for this very reason, I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. You see, we're just here to encourage them. Keep going, Radek and Sophia, keep going. And that's one part of our ministry. We're so blessed to be part of that. A second part of our ministry is we found as we went around the world with Youth for Christ that we noticed that so many of the youth ministers were burnt out, absolutely burnt out. They really needed some refreshment. And so it says in 1 Peter 2:21, for to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so you might follow in his steps. We take that verse that since we're to follow Christ as an example, that we bring a refreshment retreat to these staff members around the world, and we help them see what Christ did on the cross and help them spend time with Jesus and asking him, how can I be the same as you? How can I be like you were on the cross for others? How can I also be a person of the cross and be like that for others in our ministry? So we take them on a 3-day retreat, and we did this in Belarus 2 years ago. No, I'm sorry, in Ukraine 2 years ago, last year in Belarus, this year in Moldova. And here's a picture of the 40 Youth for Christ staff and the staff members, the spouses, and their children. All came to a camp for 3 days. Our supporters, there's some in this room, our supporters actually sent us out, and we financially paid for everything with our support money, okay, with our ministry funds. They had nothing to pay. All they had to do is come and spend time with God. In the mornings, Judy and I were their spiritual guides, leading them to some scripture verses with a journal, and then say, go spend time with God. Talk about this. So Jesus on the cross, what about the pain, Judy? Absorb the pain of others. Who am I absorbing the pain of in my life? If there are people in my ministry, I need to absorb their pain. And so they go talk to God about it for 30 minutes, come back, and they ultimately then we talk about, discuss it, and we do that twice in the morning. In the afternoons, they have a break, just rest and enjoy the nature. And then in the evenings, we do a worship service. That's it. Simple retreat. But they loved it because they didn't have to go to 8 hours of workshops all day long. And they just needed some spiritual refreshment. And family refreshment. One of the staff members there, he's right here on the end. It's hard to see him. He has 7 children around him that he brought with him. 7 children. And he said it's their very first family vacation they've ever taken. Just a 3-day camp, And so that's why we tried to do it free of charge for them. That's why we want to encourage them, because many of workers around the world, the missionaries within their countries, some of them don't have enough money to even do something like this, spiritual refreshment. And then we have a special communion together. It was really wonderful, and the people in Moldova said, thank you so much for letting us for doing this and being part of this. They said now, because we did it the first time with them, they want to try to keep doing it on their own, find the finances and do it on their own. So that's another example. We do encouragement, spiritual refreshment, and then, of course, what most people think of when they think of missionaries is they think of evangelism, right? So we do take part in evangelism. One of my roles is more of administrative because I'm equipping others to do ministry, but we covet the times that we get to actually be doing evangelistic ministry still, but it's rare. But Judy has a real special report to share with you tonight about some really amazing success when we started with an adoption of a child and it turned into something much bigger. So do you want to stand up there, Judy? Okay. I thought you might want to.
Yeah, I too just want to thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Yes.
And we are just excited to be with you and to be able to share. I was just thinking of the verse, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation for everyone who believes." And I when Mike and I share like this, we get to share about this much of what we actually do through the year. And for me, that was super easy because I get to add to a story that has been going on for 14 years since we took a little 8-year-old girl into our family. And so some of them here have followed that journey for all this time, but I will share it with you. Some of you know that we met our 4th child, Katya, in an orphanage in Ukraine. She was not adoptable at the time, for she had a normal Ukrainian family, a father who was dead from alcohol, and a mother who also drank. Katya was the youngest of 5 children, all from different fathers. Katya was in an orphanage because her aunt reported that she was often home alone as a 5-year-old when her mother was out drinking. The aunt did not call the authorities, however, to protect Katya. She did it to spite her sister. They were having an argument. The authorities found Katya in a little shed near the house where she stayed when her mother was drinking because she was scared of drunk people coming into their house. So instead, she would stay in this little shed with a homemade doll that she made from one of her mother's beer bottles. She drew a little face on the doll with a marker, or a little face on the bottle with a marker, and wrapped it in a piece of cloth. Katya hated being alone. She still hates to be alone, and she was glad for the company of her little bottle doll. We met Katya in an orphanage about 3 hours from Kyiv when she was 8 years old. We obtained permission from her mother for her to live with us, but it would be another 5 years before we were able to adopt her when she was 13. We prayed for Katya's family and took her to visit them about 2 times a year. Slowly, trust was built. Through the years and through the language barrier, we did our best to share the good news of Jesus Christ with them. They were Orthodox in name only. They knew very little about God or the Bible. Their village was filled with superstitious traditions, evil spirits, even a village babka who was basically a witch doctor who would say chants and do spell-like treatments when they were sick. Katya remembers hating to go to the babka. Whenever we visited Katya's village and the surrounding area, we could feel the demonic presence there. So many superstitions. Katya's mother scolded her for sweeping the floor, for she was disturbing the dust of the spirits. They left candy in graveyards for the spirits of dead people, and there was a well in the village where they said that a demon resided. Our children were always very relieved to drive away at the end of a visit to the village, for they honestly got the creeps there. We prayed every time we drove away, asking the Lord to cleanse us from any evil spirits, trusting his promise that greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. Now, fast forward 14 years to August 7th through 9th of this summer. Mike and I, and Katya and Cam, who had been married for 2 months, arrived in the village with our friends Randy and Vicky, who have come with us to Ukraine for the last 5 years, and a team of Ukrainian Youth for Christ volunteers. Katya's sister Nadia and her family still live there. Katya's mother died in 2014. She was actually murdered by the man that she was living with. Katya's other siblings have moved to the nearest city to find work, for there is no work in the village. There are no grocery stores. The people live from the land. Last summer was the fulfillment of a dream and many prayers. We conducted a 2-day day camp for the children and were welcomed back this summer to do a 3-day camp. The village mayor opened the community hall for us to use, turned on the electricity, which was a big deal, and gave us free rein. She even came and checked out the program one day. Was so thrilled. As we drove into the village, children were eagerly making their way to the community hall. Some of them had a 30-minute walk to get there. Big smiles were on every face as we exchanged excited waves. We stopped along the way to greet Katya's sister Nadia's family. We got to meet little Yana, the family's surprise blessing, who was born the week after camp last year. She had just turned 1. Here's a picture of Nadia, her husband Vitya, Yana, and their 2 older daughters, Vika and Katya, who are 12 and 10. Last year, 23 kids attended our camp. This year, there were 30, probably every child and young person in the whole village. This year, the children knew us. There was no shyness or hesitation, only excitement. We divided them into 4 groups and did a rotation schedule with games, crafts, music, and an English lesson. They participated in everything with gusto. This year, in the opening and closing group meetings, they were familiar with the praise songs that Vanya had led on the guitar the year before, and they were eager to sing them again. They loved the skits, and they listened to our testimonies and the Bible stories. On the second night of camp, all the parents were invited for a program. Each group performed a little intro piece and then a song. We invited Pastor Roman from the nearest evangelical church 30 miles away to share the gospel message. His tiny church of 25 people fed us breakfast and supper each day and sent us to camp with a sack lunch. All too soon, camp was finished for another year. The last testimony was shared, the last song was sung, and all of the gifts were given. We had 2 girls, Jessica and Molly Ryan from Belfouche, last year for the first village camp. They could not come this summer due to schedule conflicts, but they still wanted to help. They conducted their own soccer camp called Kicking for Christ and donated the proceeds to buy matching t-shirts for all of the children. They bought soccer equipment and other sports equipment for the village, and their gift provided for other needs at the camp as well. How special. The kids were so thrilled that Jessica and Molly had not forgotten them. There were final hugs and hopes to see you next year. As we left the community hall and drove to Katya's sister Nadia's home to say goodbye, memories of earlier trips to this same village flooded my mind. Remember the demonic involvement, the faces of people in bondage to alcohol, the dilapidated homes. Now Nadia's simple home sports a new front fence and gate, but the changes behind that gate are even greater. Nadia's mother-in-law, Valia, lives right behind them. Nadia and Valia, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, who have practically hated one another through all of our years of knowing them, have become friends. Together, they prepared a meal for us for the very first time in 14 years. Truthfully, it was the first time in 14 years that they even offered us a glass of water. And here they had this incredible meal for us, amazing. When I visited Valia after the meal, I went to her house. She told me how much Nadia has changed. She has become a great support to me, Judy. She helps me in the garden. She has learned to cook. She does everything well. She has learned to care for her family so well. She said, I tell my neighbors that I couldn't have a better daughter-in-law. This is a miracle. Both Nadia and Valia attribute the changes in their lives to God. I was able to talk to Nadia separately and just tell her all the wonderful things that her mother-in-law has said about her. And she just said, yes, Judy, I've changed. And I just said, is it God, Nadia? Is it God who's changed your life? Yes, Judy. You've chosen to follow him. Yes, Judy. And reading they've chosen to follow him, and they're reading their Bibles. Last summer, we gave Valia a Gideon New Testament in large print to make it easier for her to read. She told me that she has read it over and over this year, and she said that she is understanding more every time. To her great joy, Pastor Roman came to visit after the program for the parents. Valia was aching to ask him questions about the traditions of the Orthodox faith in light of what she had read in her Bible, and Nadia stayed around to listen as well. I want to go to a church that believes like Mike and Judy, she told him firmly. It dawned on me that through the 14 years of visits, Valia has seen God alive and real in our lives. And in 14 years, no matter who we have brought with us, whether American or Ukrainian, she has seen the same God living in them. Valia has known about God all of her life, but she is now developing a personal relationship with him and is hungry to be fed from his word. As we left the village, waving to children and parents all along the way, all these children and parents that have now become friends, I was absolutely in awe of God. This is not about us. This is about God. God's presence changing an entire village. On the way back to Kyiv, we met with Katya's other older sister, Olia. She told Katya and us something that we'd never heard before. She told Katya that everybody in her family except her was against us adopting Katya because they all thought that we would take Katya to America where they would never see her again. I chuckled and said, Olia, we thought we were adopting a child. Now I guess we've adopted your whole village. In closing, I have a very special picture to show you. This picture was sent to us just before we left Ukraine. Here is a picture of our dear Valia with Pastor Roman and his wife in their church that is 30 miles away from Katya's village of Hornostaivka. It would have taken her, she would have had to walk, get on a public van, take it away, walk some more. I mean, it would have probably taken an hour and a half to get there. Praise the Lord. Now we have a video to show you of day 2 of our camp in Hornostaivka. And as you watch it, we just really want you to keep in mind that you are watching a miracle. This was very, very hard soil. But God's presence is just changing people. And just notice the looks on the children's faces. It's so exciting.
сотворил мир, чтобы в нем с нами быть. Он знает, что в единстве легче нам по-новому жить. Тот, кто ритм дает сердцам силу видеть слепым глазам, своей жизнью показал любовь, 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 своей жизнью показал любовь. Я иду туда, где ты, туда, где ты.
Yes, as the video continues, I'll talk a little bit about the camp. And you're hearing a worship song in Russian, by the way, as it was going on there. Here's some of our Ukrainian workers. They're volunteers. They're helping out with us, Youth for Christ volunteers, and they were getting involved with the kids too. We had teenagers, we had little kids there. And again, this is not something that, there's no church at all nearby, not a single church at all nearby. Even the priest maybe barely comes for the Orthodox Church. I don't know how often. But there's Katya in the middle. She's helping us all out. Can you imagine, as Katya actually went to the same school in first grade as these kids go to school in the first grade in their village. And here's this girl that's coming back that's now living in America and is married and is bringing her husband to introduce to them, you know. And yet she's sharing, you know, the reason that that we're coming back is because of the love of Christ. Okay, she shares her testimony all the time too when we go back. But you see that we're just having fun with them. Judy's leading crafts. Maybe you've done this craft with the matches. Has anybody done this craft in camps before? Oh, and this is, yeah. And this is Cam. He's up there now. Cam's Katya's husband, and he's learning a game to play with the kids. And it was his first missions trip. He'd never been on a missions trip before. And so, and here he's not only going on a missions trip, he's also getting introduced to his wife's culture and where she had grown up, you know. And sometimes we had to do games inside because it was raining. This particular day it was raining. And the kids were singing praise songs to God, okay? And we're learning about him as that we were doing so. You don't have to watch this part of the video. I didn't know the videographer was taking pictures. So anyway, what started as the adoption of an 8-year-old girl in 2005 turned into the adoption of a whole Ukrainian village. And so we thank you so much for sending us to Ukraine. As I said, this is not the main part of our ministry, but it's one of the funnest parts of our ministry because we get to be with kids. And I don't want to be a trainer of somebody that's supposed to, okay, I'm training youth pastors how to do youth ministry, right? Yeah, what if I'm never with youth, you know? And so anyway, you just saw Katya introducing her husband to the kids at the camp, and I was doing a skit there too. But that little video there was taken on an iPhone by one of our Ukrainian volunteers, and then they would show it to the kids the next day, you know, when they came to camp. And so thank you for being part of that, for sending us and being, you know, involved with our ministry. The next part of our ministry, I wanted to share with you 2 more parts if we're done here in just a little while, and that's equipping. One of my main parts of my ministry is actually, oh, I forgot to tell you, I see these Samaritan's purses here. Back before I finished the village, okay? 4 years ago, when the village was still hard, okay, a hard place to be, we had the privilege of going up with one of the coordinators of Samaritan's Purse for Ukraine, a Ukrainian, and distributing these in Katya's village, okay? It was a really cool thing. In fact, we even had a girl from Kentucky, right, Judy? We had a girl from Kentucky, and you know, this is really bizarre. This is a miracle of God. Now, you know that sometimes you don't have the box, that you just do it in like a Walmart clear plastic, you know, Tupperware thing, you know, that kind of thing. And this girl had done this. She was in Kentucky, and she was with us on our mission trip that year, okay? Went to the village. We're distributing Samaritan's Purse boxes, okay?
And I was trying to pick good ones for Katya's nieces.
Yeah, Judy was sort of looking through them a little bit. You're not supposed to do that, but looking through them a little bit because Katya's nieces definitely qualify for somebody to receive a Samaritan's Purse box in that village. And so Judy was doing that, and as she's doing it, the girl from Kentucky is on her trip, and she's looking at this and giving it to one of her nieces, right?
Yeah, well, we were kind of looking through it.
Looking through a little
Sure we
bit.
had a good one.
And were you opening it up too, Judy?
Yeah.
He's sort of opening it up, and she's looking at this as man, this looks like the one I made, back a few months ago, back home.
She was helping her friend.
She was helping her friend do it. And I was, this doesn't, and so it says, if there is, what was the color of the soccer ball?
If there's a red and white soccer ball
In
halfway down.
deflated red and white soccer ball, I packed this particular Samaritan's Purse box back in Kentucky and just randomly sent it to Samaritan's Purse with all the hundreds of thousands of other boxes. And sure enough, that soccer ball was right in there. And she was giving it to one of Katya's nieces. It was so amazing. We were totally blown away. But now, all things don't always happen good like that, though I don't want to just paint a beautiful picture, because we also had a Samaritan, when we were doing a Samaritan's Purse box after one of our evangelistic programs there in the village, and we were giving it to one of the kids. Well, one of the grandmas didn't know who we were and wasn't so sure about us at that time. And Judy said it was a hard village, right? She grabbed it from her grandson's thing and threw it back in our face and said, "You're a cult, get out of here." Okay? So anyway, that we have that too sometimes, but not now. It's just amazing. God has really changed this village, and we think that it's his spirit. And we think it's the faithfulness, too, of people that prayed and also that have sent us and others. So anyway, we're so praising God for that. So back to the boring part of my job. All right? No, I'm kidding. One of my significant parts of my job is actually as this trainer, and I have to meet with different wonderful people from around the world. We do it by Skype most of the time, but occasionally God allows us to get together, maybe 2 days a year visually. And I have a guy from South Africa that's on my team, and he's in charge of Africa training for Youth for Christ. Here, I'll point him out. Here's EJ. EJ right here. Chris Harding from Australia is in charge of our coaching department. Alan's from Northern Ireland. He's responsible for Europe and the Middle East. And then Melissa's works in the Latin America region. So we have a team that we get to work together in developing training materials for the nations and collaborating together to see how can we do a better job with this kind of thing. So that's one of my main parts of a job, but not a lot of fun to share stories with you because we get to sit around computers and tables. But hopefully what we're doing is truly making a difference for the kingdom. And then the last part of my job is something that I want to invite you to participate on, okay? And that is with partnership. Partnership is a really important strategy, and I think it's important for the body of Christ that we realize that we're all ultimately partners of one another, all right? And so we partner as Americans with Youth for Christ Ukraine or Youth for Christ wherever, all right? I want to share with you a story of how we do it in Ukraine because it's our, don't tell anybody, it's our first love, okay? Because we live there. It's our second home. We speak the Russian language. And so this is very important to us that we see the gospel continuing there. Youth for Christ Ukraine has 100 day centers all across the country. What is a day center? A day center is when a church opens up their doors 2 to 5 times a week after school and offers an after-school program for the teenagers and children to come in and just gives them a meal, homework help, and a Bible lesson. Simple. Volunteers all over Ukraine, 900 Ukrainians volunteer in that ministry weekly and helping open up their churches. There's no... Mainly to youth at risk. A lot of these kids don't have good families, and 95% of them are non-Christians, okay, that are coming into these programs. And so how do Judy and I can help as Americans, and how do we as a team? So we have a summer missions trip every year. You're welcome to join us. We always need Americans to join us. And we go overseas to Ukraine, and we choose a different area of Ukraine every time, and we work with those day centers, those teenagers from that area of Ukraine. Okay, it's sort of like we have 50 states, they have 20 states, okay? So we go to a different state. Let's say we're, for example, going to the state of, I don't know, South Carolina, okay? And just randomly. We go there, all the day centers then around South Carolina said, okay, you can take 10 kids to the camp. And they choose 10 kids to the camp. We have about 100 kids come in, and they bring their counselors, the people that work from those day centers, with them. We do an English camp for them. We share Christ. We develop relationships. We help the day center workers. They even develop closer relationships. Many of the kids come to Christ. Usually about half of the kids that come to Christ. And then they go back with their day center workers back to their places for a continual follow-up and discipleship. Now, isn't that cool? And so that's a partnership that we feel like we can help them with. And so when we do it, basically the charge for our missions trip is $1,800 plus airfare. That pays for the kids all to come to camp. They can come free of charge, and these are youth at risk, so their families can't really afford to send them to camp anyway. And so what we do is, even 2 years ago, we did it on the war front. We did it actually 25 miles from the war front where Russia and Ukraine are still at war. And we had teenagers at the camp that heard the artillery fire and could tell you the size of the mortar shell coming by the sound in the air of the artillery fire, okay? Because they hear it every other day. So you're going to see this little video. I'm not going to show the whole video, but show a little video so that you can think about maybe God would have us come or me come and be involved in helping teach English there at the camp. We'll put up the music just a little bit there for us.
Come and make your home here in my heart.
That's good.
Here in my heart. Your spirit moves, you lift me up inside. I let you let go, look up
Yeah,
to you.
I like the Black Hills,
I
yeah.
look to you. I won't waste another day.
This is calisthenics in the morning, by the way. And we taught them English songs. If you come, you get a translator to work with you the whole week. We have a translator assigned to every person. And they come in and help. You have about 10 kids, 10 teenagers, 12 to 16-year-olds in your group. And you get to teach them English. This year we had some extra extreme sports that happened to be at the camp we were at. It was a real blessing. The kids had never done anything like this before in their lives, of course. Even the counselors. There's Katya. Katya and her husband, of course, also helped with this camp as well. So that just gives you a little idea of what our English camps are like and what we do there, all right? You could see the rest of the video online if you'd like to. But what I'd like to do is sort of in closing is sort of bring this all together of why we do this and why you're part of this and everything. It's all ultimately from Matthew 28. It says, go and make disciples, right? And so that means also, I love this, my theme verse that I put up here, on the idea that the things that Paul said this to Timothy, the things you've heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. In other words, when we're passing the baton, well, let me give you an example here. Okay, so Amy, you have your baton, all right? All right, you have that. And one moment, okay, you stand over there. You stand right there, all right? And then, Pastor, can I use you too? All right? You stand right there, okay? And then I need you to have, yes, exactly. Okay, and exactly, we need another teenager, Asher. I had an Ashton earlier, sorry. Asher, would you go down the aisle a little bit over there, okay? All right. You're the anchor, that's right, because first we're going to have Amy representing the church and supporters that are sending us as missionaries to the field. I'm going to be the missionary, okay? And then I'm going to send it out to, the pastor's going to represent here a Ukrainian youth ministry director, okay? До свидания. No, you need to say привет, hello or something. I don't know. You want to get goodbye yet? Well, I guess if I give you the baton, you can say до свидания. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's all right. So I'll give it to you as the Ukrainian, let's say Sasha, okay? Sasha is the director, national director of Ukraine for Youth for Christ, okay? Then you're going to give it to the teenager over there, and you're going to pass a baton, and then you get to, Asher, leave the building. All right, let's see if this works. All right, here we go. All right, thank you very much. Oh, you know how to do that really good. Here we go, Asher, and go! Thank you all very much. Obviously, you see the illustration there of what we're talking about here of 2 Timothy 2:2. Okay, that's what the church is involved with missions. It doesn't have to be me as a missionary, any missionary, or as whoever we're discipling, right? That if it could be our children, we're talking about here, that we continue this process so that we give it to others and give it away. So in conclusion, also, how can you be involved? And I lost my clicker. Oh, there it is. Okay. Last thing, you can be praying for us, and not just us, but other missionaries, of course, too. And one way you can do is prayer is that we have a newsletter that we send out by email every month, but also we send out a quarterly regular mail for snail mail, too, also. We have a little sign-up sheet on that little table by our little Youth for Christ table. Please be involved with our ministry. We need people to be praying for us. Secondly, we do have a ministry fund need. We happen to do a little bit too much ministry this summer. We used all our money up. So we actually went down to zero in July for the first time in our ministry fund. And so if that's something that you'd like to be part of, we'd love to have you part of our team of sending us, like Amy just showed us, and then sending us as well. So there's a ministry fund need. If you happen to have place for cows, do you know about Steer Incorporated? That's a little brochure over there. Steer Incorporated has lots of money actually designated from Youth for Christ where they can actually purchase cows from your herd, okay? And we have this happening. I'll be honest with you, we have 35 cows now being raised all over South Dakota for our support. And those calves are being sold, thank God for them, yes. They are being sold for our missions that we use what we've just showed you, what we use it for, okay? And then also you can also participate by actually coming. Maybe God's leading you to participate in that English camp project, okay? We're going to be going again in 2020, and that's next summer. Can you believe 2020 is next summer? But anyway, August 12 to 24, we're taking a team. We'd love to have you come. As I said, the cost is $1,800 plus airfare. The nice thing about the airfare is you get to choose it yourself. And actually, you have to be in Ukraine for these dates, of course. But afterwards, if you want to go somewhere in Europe afterwards and have a vacation that you've been dreaming about, that's your choice. You can do that. Yes. Yes, and that's not a joke, actually. This year, because of the HBO miniseries Chernobyl that's become very popular, we decided we're going to take our team to Chernobyl this year. It's safe, perfectly safe. I can guarantee that it's safe. The only thing is you are not allowed to take any souvenirs home with you from Chernobyl. All right? That is against the law, and it's not good for your health. But anyway, but seriously, we actually will be taking a tour also during this trip, okay? So that is how you could be involved with us and praying, financially supporting. And here, our last slide is us saying goodbye to the campers at camp, okay? And that's what we do when they take their buses away and going back home. But we're so thankful because we know on those same buses are people that are going to disciple them when they get back home. Youth for Christ volunteers, Ukrainian ones, that are continuing the ministry as they leave. So, thank you very much. Is there end in prayer? And thank you.
We're going to pray for you guys.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn this off.
But anybody who wants to, if you can come close, hey, let's put hands on this front.
heart that we placed in Mike and Judy. And that they heard your call and obeyed your call. We thank you, Father, for your goodness to them all these years and providing for them, watching over them when they were sick, guiding them when they had little kids and they were floundering in a new country with new language, Lord. And when the plumbing was bad and the apartment was empty and they had to completely furnish it, they had to finish that apartment, Lord. I think of those times, those hard things, and you always provided for them. And we just recommission them, Lord, to do as you would have them do, to be wherever they need to be your hands and feet, Lord. I thank you.